Anuradha from AC department. My topic is multi-rate digital signal processing. Here in my lecture I am going to cover introduction, sampling rate conversion and decimation. Here in the introduction part, first we will see what is a sampling rate conversion. First we will see multi-rate digital signal processing. The systems that employs multiple sampling rates in the processing of digital signals is called multi-rate digital signal processing. Multi-rate digital signal processing uses sampling rate conversion. First, what is a sampling rate conversion? A signal from conversion from one sampling rate to another sampling rate is called sampling rate conversion. Next, sampling rate conversion can be obtained using two methods. In the first method, the digital signal is first converted into analog signal using D to A converter. Next, filtering process is used if it is necessary. Next, the resulting analog signal is resampled according to the given sampling rate. Next, in this method, there is a noise introduced into the signal. So this is the main drawback for this method. Next, sampling rate conversion in the second method completely done in digital domain using decimation process and interpolation. The decimation means the sampling rate is decreased by a factor of D. Next, interpolation. In the interpolation process, we can increase the sampling rate by a factor of I. First, we will see downsampling. So this is the block diagram for representing downsampling. We are decreasing the input signal we are decreasing the sampling rate of input signal by a factor of m. This x of n is the input signal, y of xd of n is the output signal. The relation between xd of n and x of n is xd of n is equal to x of mn, where m is the decimation factor by which we can decrease the number of samples. See, this is the figure. This figure represents the original input signal. So here this figure contains different samples. So this figure contains total 30 samples. These 30 samples we can decrease using decimation factor of 3. So if decimation factor is 3, we are decreasing this number of samples in input sequence. So thereby the output sequence contains only the 5 samples. So we can decrease the sampling rate. So in this figure, the number of samples are decreased means sampling rate of the input sequence is decreased. Next, for example, you will see using a problem. Next, this is the input sequence. This input sequence contains total 10 samples with amplitude of 0, 1, 2 and so on till 9. So x of n contains total 10 samples. Now y of n is equal to x of mn. This is the mathematical relation between output and input. So m is in a decimation factor. For example, if m is equal to 2, y of 0 is equal to x of 0. That x of 0 sample from the input sequence is 0. Next, n is equal to 1, y of 1 is equal to x of 2, sample value is 2. Similarly, for other samples also, y of 4 is equal to x of 8 and is equal to 8. Means this output sequence contains only the 5 samples. The original input sequence contains total 10 samples, output sequence contains only the 5 samples. Means if the decimation factor is 2, the total number of samples are by 2 we give the number of samples in the output sequence. So thereby the downsampling will decrease the number of samples in the original input sequence. Next we will see this spectrum of downsampling sequence. See, x of n is the input, y of n is the output. The mathematical relation between y of n output and input is y of n is equal to x of mn. So for getting the frequency spectrum of output sequence, first we have to take the periodic impulsive train. So the periodic impulsive train is equal to 1. 1 for n is equal to 0, n is equal to plus or minus m, plus or minus 2m and so on. 0 otherwise. So this is equal to periodic impulsive train. So this periodic impulsive train is multiplied with the original input sequence to get output sequence called y of n. Next, the jet transform of y of n is equal to summation n is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n and z to the power of minus n. The x of n is substituted here and that is the multiplication of x of n and the p of n. So after simplifications, after applying the jet transform, this total output spectrum of output sequence is equal to 1 by d summation k is equal to minus infinity to infinity, n is a summation n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of e power j omega minus 2 pi k by d. So this is the output spectrum y of e power j omega. This y of e power j omega is equal to 1 by d summation x of e power j omega minus 2 pi k by d. So this equation states about, this equation contains many factors in this. This 1 by d, this 1 by d represents the total input spectrum is scaled down by a factor of d. Next, x of e power j omega by d. X of e power j omega by d means the original input spectrum is frequency stretched by a factor of d. Next, x of e power j omega minus 2 pi k by d means the x of e power j omega d by d input spectrum is frequency shifted by a factor of d. So the total output spectrum that is y of e power j omega is equal to summation of scale frequency stretched and shifted version of input spectrum. This is the statement for the output spectrum of downsampler. This is the figure representing the input spectrum and output spectrum for downsampler. Here this is the figure for considering m is equal to 2. First, the first figure is m is equal to 2. So y of e power j omega contains only two components. One is 1 by 2 x of e power j omega by 2. Next 1 by 2 x of e power j omega minus 2 pi. So this is the first component, then this is the second component. So this is the summation of first component and second component. So this figure will give the output spectrum of downsampler. See, there is no aliasing observed in this figure. So this is the output spectrum by considering m is equal to 2. Next, so this is the output spectrum. This is the output spectrum of downsampler by considering m is equal to 3. M is equal to 3. If you expand the original output spectrum, it will contain 3 components. So first component is 1 by 3 e power j omega by 3. Second component 1 by 3 x of e power j omega minus 2 pi. Third component 1 by 3 x of e power j omega minus 6 pi by d. So these are the 3 components present in the output spectrum of downsampler. See, this is the first component present in the output spectrum. So this spectrum is defined from minus pi to pi and shifted by 2 pi. So whereas the second component, the second component is same as the first spectrum. Only difference here is the first spectrum is frequency shifted by a factor of 2 pi. So every spectrum is placed at 2 pi, 4 pi and so on. So this is the second component present in the output spectrum of downsampler. Next, third component is 1 by 3 x of e power j omega minus 4 pi. Means the input spectrum is shifted by a factor of 4 pi. So the output spectrum contains only at 4 pi, 8 pi, 12 pi and so on. So for m is equal to 3, the output spectrum of downsampler contains total 3 components. First component, this is the first component, this is the second component and this is the third component. Now the output spectrum is a summation of all these 3 components. So this is the output spectrum. Observe the difference between last slide figure and this figure. For m is equal to 2, there is no aliasing between the successive spectra. But m is equal to 3, the spectras are overlapped. Means we will get aliasing. Spectrums are overlapped, means that overlapped portion we call it generally as aliasing. This is the case only for m is equal to 3. But this is not the case for m is equal to 2. M is equal to 2, the aliasing portion is not there. M is equal to 2, there is no overlapped portion. But m is equal to 3, there is a aliasing portion. This is only because of the m is equal to 3. M is equal to 3, this is the overlapped portion. So now our aim is to avoid this overlapped portion. So thereby the output spectrum should be is equal to input spectrum. So now my question for students is how to avoid this aliasing portion from the output spectrum of downsampler for m is equal to 3. See, generally we can avoid the aliasing using low pass filters only. Now for So which filter is used and what is the cutoff frequency of that filter? See, our aim is to avoid this aliasing portion. We have to remove this aliasing portion. So generally we will prefer only the filter. So now what is the filter? What is the type of that filter? That is the first question. My second question is what is the cutoff frequency for that filter? So using these two, by answering these two questions, we will get the exact portion of downsampler that